6:30 in the morning. A bell chimes above a diner door. A man stumbles inside. Dirt caked under his fingernails. Jacket torn at the shoulder. Boots leaving wet prints across cracked linoleum. He looks homeless. He smells like someone who's been sleeping on the streets. But the phone in his pocket could buy the entire city block. And what happens in the next 11 minutes will change 2 lives forever. Because this man isn't what he appears to be. He's running a test. A brutal, methodical experiment on human nature. And 46 people have already failed. This waitress is number 47. His last chance. And what she does next will either save him or confirm his darkest belief about humanity. Park Jin-ho's hands won't stop shaking. Not from the cold. Not from hunger. From 3 months of not sleeping. 3 months of testing a theory that's eating him alive from the inside out. Because 3 months ago, his wife died. Brain aneurysm. No warning. No time to say goodbye. She collapsed in their kitchen while he was closing a hotel deal 7,000 miles away in Dubai. By the time his private jet touched down, racing through the night sky at maximum speed, she was already gone. The funeral was massive. Over 1,000 people packed into a cathedral that cost more to rent for an afternoon than most families make in a year. Designer black suits. Flowers that cost more than most people's cars. Catered sympathy from people who probably didn't even remember her name. They lined up to shake his hand. Said all the right words. Offered condolences that sounded like they'd been copy-pasted from a greeting card website. She was such a light. She's in a better place now. Time heals all wounds. Empty phrases that meant nothing. That cost them nothing to say. And then, within minutes, sometimes seconds, they pivoted. Asked about the Hong Kong expansion. About the quarterly reports. About deals that suddenly seemed urgent now that the polite mourning period had elapsed. Nobody asked if he was okay. Nobody looked at his face long enough to see that he was breaking into pieces right in front of them. That his hands shook when he held his coffee cup. That he hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a time since the night she died. They looked at his empire. At his net worth. At what he could do for them. At the doors he could open. The connections he could provide. The money he could move with a single phone call. That night, Jin-ho stood alone in his penthouse on the 47th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing him a city he owned pieces of. Skyscrapers with his name carved into their facades. Hotels where presidents and celebrities stayed. Restaurants where people waited months for reservations. Real estate that made him one of the wealthiest men in the entire state. And he realized something terrifying. Something that made his stomach drop. He'd disappeared. Buried under so much money that nobody could see the man drowning beneath it. He'd become his bank account. His portfolio. His last name and what it could do for people. The man inside, the one who was grieving, breaking, barely holding on, that man didn't exist to anyone anymore. His wife used to whisper something to him when she couldn't sleep. When the weight of everything got too heavy. When the pressure of maintaining an empire made her feel small. She'd curl into his chest in the dark hours before dawn and say it like a prayer. People are good, Jean. You just have to give them the chance to show you. He'd always believed her. Always wanted to believe her. She saw beauty in things he missed. Found kindness in places he'd stopped looking. But now she was gone. And he needed proof. Concrete, undeniable proof that she was right. That the world hadn't rotted through. That humanity was still capable of seeing past dollar signs and recognizing another human being. So Jin-ho made a decision that would have gotten him declared incompetent if anyone knew about it. If his board of directors caught wind. If his lawyers or financial advisors had any idea what he was planning. He stripped it all away. The $15,000 suits tailored perfectly to his frame. The Rolex that cost more than most people's annual salary. The haircut that required appointments booked 3 months in advance with a stylist who flew in from New York. He went to a donation bin behind a church on the east side. Pulled out clothes that smelled like mothballs and someone else's life. A jacket with a torn shoulder. Jeans with stains that wouldn't come out. Boots that were 2 sizes too big and made him walk differently. He let his beard grow out. Stopped showering. Rubbed dirt into his skin and under his fingernails until he looked like someone who'd been living rough for weeks. Maybe months. And then he walked into his own businesses. His own empire. To see who'd still see him. Test number 1. His flagship restaurant. The one that required reservations 6 weeks out. The one where celebrities flew in from Los Angeles and New York just to eat. Where critics wrote glowing reviews and food bloggers posted pictures that got millions of views. Jin-ho had designed every detail personally. The lighting. The playlist. The way tables were spaced to make conversations feel intimate but not cramped. He walked through the front door at 7:30 on a Saturday night. Peak time. The hostess podium was polished to a mirror shine. The hostess, a young woman named Melissa who he'd personally hired 8 months ago, smiled brightly at the couple behind him. Designer handbag. Expensive cologne wafting in the air. Right this way, we have your table ready. Jin-ho stood at the podium. Waited. The couple walked past him like he was furniture. Melissa finally glanced at him. Her smile died instantly. Completely. Like someone had flipped a switch. Her expression shifted to something between disgust and fear. Can I help you? The warmth was gone. Her voice was flat. Cold. Table for 1, please. She didn't even check her book. Didn't make a show of looking. Just glanced past him toward the dining room. We're fully booked tonight, sir. Jin-ho looked past her shoulder. Counted 9 empty tables through the window. White tablecloths waiting. Candles unlit but ready. It looks like there might be reservations only. You can try calling next time. She was already looking past him. Toward the next group walking in. People who looked like they belonged. The couple behind him didn't say a word. Just walked past like he wasn't there. Like he was part of the decor. An obstacle to step around. Jin-ho left. His chest felt tight. His breathing shallow. But this was just the beginning. Test number 2. The coffee shop on the ground floor of his hotel. The boutique place. The one he'd personally designed when he renovated the building. Where he'd chosen every piece of art on the walls. Where he'd spent 3 weeks finding the perfect blend of beans. He walked in needing to use the bathroom. His stomach was cramping. He'd barely eaten in 2 days, running these tests. Barely slept. He approached the counter. The barista looked up from her phone. Her expression shifted immediately. A micro-expression. Barely noticeable. But Jin-ho saw it. The slight recoil. The hardening around her eyes. Bathrooms for paying customers only. I'll buy something after. No. You need to purchase first. Her voice was firm. Final. No room for negotiation. Jin-ho watched 3 people walk in after him. A businessman in a suit. A woman with a yoga mat. A college kid with headphones. Each one got the bathroom code without asking. Without having to buy anything first. The barista just smiled and pointed toward the back. Jin-ho bought a small coffee. $3.50. Left without drinking it. Test number 3 destroyed him completely. His head of security. A man named Marcus Williams. 43 years old. 6 years on Jin-ho's personal payroll. Someone he'd promoted twice based on merit and loyalty. Someone whose daughter's college tuition Jin-ho had quietly paid for when Marcus mentioned the financial strain. Jin-ho walked through the lobby of his downtown hotel. The one with the marble floors and the crystal chandelier imported from Italy. Marcus was doing rounds. Checking exits. Monitoring cameras. Jin-ho sat on one of the lobby couches. Just sitting. Not causing trouble. Not bothering anyone. Marcus noticed him immediately. Started watching. Following. Jin-ho got up. Walked outside. Down 2 blocks. Into a plaza that Jin-ho technically owned through a holding company. He sat on a bench. Watched people pass. 23 minutes. Marcus followed for 23 minutes. Then Marcus approached. Put a firm hand on Jin-ho's shoulder. Sir, I'm going to need you to move along. Jin-ho turned slowly. Looked directly into Marcus's eyes. Eyes that had looked back at him 1,000 times. In meetings. During security briefings. At the holiday party where Jin-ho had personally handed Marcus a bonus check. Nothing. No recognition. Not even a flicker. I'm not causing trouble, Jin-ho said quietly. You're loitering. This is private property. I'm just sitting. Leave now or I'm calling the police. Marcus's hand moved to his radio. His voice was steady. Professional. Completely devoid of doubt. Jin-ho stood. His legs felt weak. His chest hollow. Marcus, he said. Testing. One last attempt. Marcus's expression didn't change. I don't know you. And I need you to leave. Jin-ho left. Walked 4 blocks before he had to stop. Lean against a building. His throat burned. His eyes stung. He couldn't breathe right. Marcus didn't recognize his face without the suit. Without the context of wealth surrounding him. Without the markers that made him human. He'd become completely invisible. By week 6, Jin-ho had conducted 46 tests. 46 carefully orchestrated experiments across his businesses and the city. Hotels. Restaurants. Coffee shops. Retail stores he had investments in. Even a charity gala he'd donated $2 million to the year before. He walked into that gala wearing the torn jacket. Dirt under his nails. Security stopped him at the door. Wouldn't let him in. Threatened to call the police when he insisted. This was a charity event. For homeless services. The irony wasn't lost on him. 46 people who smiled at money and turned cold the moment it disappeared. 46 proofs that his wife was wrong. That people weren't good. That kindness was just a performance everyone dropped the second you couldn't do something for them. The second you stopped being useful. He documented everything. Kept notes. Times. Names when he could get them. Detailed descriptions of how people's faces changed when they looked at him. The pattern was consistent. Undeniable. Scientifically reproducible. See the wealth, warmth, attention, respect, time, consideration. Remove the wealth, coldness, dismissal, disgust, fear, invisibility. He was starting to resent her for believing it. For making him hope that humanity was better than this. For whispering those words in the dark like they were true when clearly, they weren't. Then came Tuesday. Week 7. 6:30 in the morning. A diner called Mel's on the east side. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting since yesterday. Where truckers stopped at dawn and night shift workers grabbed breakfast before heading home to sleep through the afternoon. Jin-ho walked in. Exhausted. Hollowed out. Ready for test number 47 to confirm what he already knew. What 46 previous tests had proven beyond reasonable doubt. And everything he thought he understood about people shattered in 11 minutes. The bell above the door chimed. Several people looked up. Looked away just as quickly. The other servers saw him walk in. One, a woman in her 50s with bleached blonde hair, suddenly remembered she needed to check inventory in the back. Another found urgent business by the dishwasher, disappearing through the kitchen doors. The regular at table 3, a man who came in every Tuesday morning, Jin-ho had learned, whispered something to his wife. Both of them looked. Both of them looked away fast, their conversation dropping to silence. But Shanice Porter grabbed the coffee pot and walked straight toward him. No hesitation. No pause. Shanice was 19 hours into her shift. A double that had turned into something more because Jenny called out sick and there was nobody else to cover. Her feet had stopped feeling like feet somewhere around hour 12. Now they were just distant sources of pain she'd learned to ignore the way you ignore background noise. White noise that never quite goes away but you stop registering consciously. Her vision kept blurring at the edges. The beginning stages of exhaustion so deep it became physical. Her daughter's inhaler prescription had been denied again by insurance. Some bureaucratic nonsense about prior authorization and formulary requirements. $340 she didn't have. Might as well have been $3 million. Rent was due in 2 days. She was short $180. The kind of short that gets you evicted in this city. The kind where landlords don't accept promises or explanations or pleas. Her car was making a noise that meant something expensive was about to break. Her daughter needed new shoes, the ones she had were too small, causing blisters. The electricity bill was overdue. But she poured coffee. Smiled at regulars. Remembered their orders and asked about their families. Kept moving. Because stopping meant thinking. And thinking meant sinking. Jin-ho sat in the corner booth. The one where the fluorescent light overhead had burned out 2 weeks ago and nobody had replaced it yet. Where the vinyl was cracked and patched with duct tape. Where the table wobbled unless you folded up a napkin and wedged it under the leg. He braced himself. For the disgust. The pity. The fear. The cold dismissal he'd seen 46 times before. The micro-expressions that said, "You don't belong here," more clearly than words ever could. Shanice walked up. Her uniform was stained with coffee and something that looked like syrup. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had started neat but was now falling apart. Morning. Her voice was warm. Tired, but genuine. Like she meant it. Jin-ho looked up, surprised. Her eyes were bloodshot. Dark circles underneath. The kind that come from weeks of not enough sleep, not just one bad night. But they were steady. Present. Looking at him. Not through him. At him. Coffee? Please. She poured without hesitation. Her hand didn't shake. Didn't pull back when his fingers, still dirty, still rough, dirt caked under the nails, reached for the cup. She set down a menu. Take your time, hun. No judgment in her voice. No disgust. No fear. No cold dismissal. Just normalcy. Like he was any other customer at 6:30 on a Tuesday morning. Jin-ho stared at the menu without seeing it. His chest felt strange. Tight but different than before. Shanice walked away. Back to the counter. Refilled the regular's coffee without being asked. Laughed, actually laughed, at something the cook yelled through the kitchen window. A genuine sound. Not forced. Not performed. She picked up the crayon the toddler at table 7 dropped. Handed it back. The kid dropped it again immediately. Shanice picked it up again. Same patience. Same smile. The mother looked embarrassed. I'm so sorry. Don't be. That's what they do. Shanice ruffled the kid's hair. Testing physics, right? Gravity works every time. She moved through the diner like she was conducting an orchestra. Refilling cups before they hit empty. Clearing plates. Bringing extra napkins before people asked. Checking in without hovering. She wasn't performing. She wasn't acting. She wasn't pretending to care. She was just there. Present in a way Jin-ho had forgotten people could be. When she came back to his booth, Jin-ho had already decided something. This would be his last test. After this, he'd have his answer. 47 data points. A complete dataset. Irrefutable proof of what humanity had become. What's the absolute smallest thing I can order? Shanice didn't flinch at the question. Didn't look uncomfortable or annoyed or like she was calculating whether he was worth her time. Are you hungry? I'm between paychecks. Most servers would have walked away right there. Would have dismissed him as someone not worth the time. Not worth the energy. Someone who couldn't tip, therefore someone who didn't matter. Shanice glanced toward the kitchen. Then leaned in slightly. Lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret. Like they were conspirators. 2 egg special. $2.75. Comes with toast. She paused. Glanced toward the window where morning light was starting to filter through. But we made way too many home fries this morning. Cook went overboard. They're just gonna get tossed when the lunch prep starts. You want some? Jin-ho's throat tightened. I can't pay for extras. I'm not asking you to. Her voice was firm but kind. We're throwing them out anyway. Makes more sense for them to go to someone who'll eat them. She was gone before he could argue. Before he could insist or refuse or make it awkward. Jin-ho stared at his reflection in the black coffee. His hands were shaking again. But different this time. Not from fear or exhaustion. From something else. 46 people had seen him as a problem to avoid. An inconvenience to dismiss. A risk to remove. She saw someone hungry. And she fed him. Shanice came back 3 minutes later. Set down a plate in front of him. 2 eggs. Perfectly cooked. Sunny side up. Toast cut diagonally. And home fries, enough for 2 people. Maybe 3. This is way too much, Jin-ho said. His voice cracked slightly. Cook likes me. I don't ask why. She refilled his coffee even though it was still mostly full. Started to turn away. Wait. She stopped. Looked back. Patient. Why are you nice to someone who probably can't tip? The question came out sharper than Jin-ho meant it. Almost accusatory. Like he was challenging her. Testing her. Waiting for her to admit there was an angle. A hidden motive. Something transactional underneath the kindness. Shanice stopped wiping the counter. Set down her rag. Really looked at him this time. Not at his clothes or his smell or the dirt under his fingernails or the way his hair stuck up at odd angles. At him. At the person underneath. You okay? 3 words. Simple. Direct. Jin-ho's entire chest cracked open. 3 months. 97 days. 1,000 conversations. Meetings with executives and lawyers and business partners. Dinners with people who called themselves friends. Calls with family members who asked about the business but never about him. Nobody had asked. Not once. Not until now. No. His voice broke on the word. Shattered into pieces. No, I'm not okay. Shanice checked the clock on the wall. The cheap plastic one that was 3 minutes fast. The manager was still in the back. Morning rush was about 10 minutes out. She was risking her job. This conversation wasn't part of her duties. Wasn't billable time. She made a choice anyway. Sat down across from him. Right there in the booth. Her manager would definitely have something to say if he saw this. What's going on? You don't know me. I know what it looks like when someone's about to give up. Her voice was quiet. Certain. Like she'd seen this before. Recognized the signs. You're close. I can see it. Jin-ho felt something break apart behind his ribs. Something he'd been holding together with wire and willpower and denial for 3 months. My wife used to say something. She'd say people are good. That you just have to give them the chance to show you. He looked at Shanice. Met her eyes. Do you think that's true? Shanice was quiet for a long moment. Her eyes distant. Unfocused. Like she was pulling from something deep. Some well of experience she'd rather not revisit. I think people are terrified, she finally said. Of not having enough. Of getting hurt. Of losing what little they have. So they protect themselves. Build walls. Stop seeing each other. Stop taking risks on kindness because kindness can be exploited. The door chimed. More customers. Early birds getting breakfast before work. Shanice glanced toward them. She should be taking orders. Should be working. She stayed. But yeah. Most people are good. They're just waiting for someone to go first. Waiting for permission to remember how. What if they're only good when there's something in it for them? Then they're not good. They're surviving. She picked up his empty coffee cup. Refilled it again even though he'd barely touched it. But most people? They're not surviving. They're just scared. Scared that if they give, there won't be enough left for them. Scared that kindness makes you weak. Vulnerable. Another customer called for her. Voice impatient. Shanice stood. Picked up her order pad. But she didn't leave yet. Looked down at him one more time. Whatever's breaking you, you don't have to carry it alone. You just have to let someone help. Let someone see you. Then she was gone. Back to pouring coffee and taking orders and making people feel seen in tiny ways they probably didn't even notice. A smile. A laugh. Remembering someone's name. Asking about the thing they mentioned last week. Jin-ho sat frozen. His food getting cold in front of him. His vision blurring. He ate slowly. Each bite tasting like proof. Like evidence that maybe, his wife hadn't been wrong. When Shanice brought his check 15 minutes later, $2.75 written in her neat handwriting, she found 3 $20 bills tucked under his coffee cup. Folded carefully. And a napkin with 9 words written in shaky handwriting that looked like it had been written by someone whose hands wouldn't stop shaking. Tomorrow. Noon. 1049 West Adams. Floor 12. Please. This matters. She looked up. Scanning the diner. He was already gone. The bell above the door still swaying slightly. Shanice stared at that napkin for 4 hours. Through the rest of her shift. While she cleaned tables and refilled sugar dispensers and counted her tips, $83, not enough, and closed out the register. On the bus ride home. The early morning bus that smelled like cleaning solution and exhaustion. Where other night shift workers slumped against windows, trying to sleep during the 30-minute ride. While her daughter slept beside her in their tiny apartment. 2 bedrooms but barely. Walls so thin she could hear the neighbors arguing. Plumbing that rattled. Heat that worked sporadically. Every horror movie started like this. Every true crime documentary. Woman meets stranger. Stranger leaves cryptic note with an address. Woman disappears. They'd find her body in a dumpster. Her daughter would grow up without a mother. The news would call it tragic but predictable. Another woman who should have known better. But something about his eyes. The way he'd looked at her when she asked if he was okay. Like she'd just handed him proof that the world hadn't completely rotted through. Like she'd given him something more valuable than money. More necessary than food. Like she'd reminded him he was human. So at 11:47 the next morning, Shanice stood outside a glass tower downtown. The kind of building she'd walk past but never enter. Where people in suits worth more than her car moved through revolving doors like they owned the air itself. Like they'd purchased the right to take up space. Her hands were trembling so hard she could barely press the elevator button. She hit it 3 times before it registered. She almost left. 4 different times. Turned around. Walked 3 steps toward the exit. Stopped. What if he really needed help? What if she was his last chance at something and she walked away? What if her daughter asked her one day why she didn't take the risk? Why she didn't find out? The elevator dinged. Doors opened. She stepped inside before she could change her mind. The elevator was marble and mirrors. She could see herself from every angle. Her uniform from the diner. The coffee stains she couldn't get out no matter how much she scrubbed. Her hair pulled back but messy. Dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide anymore. She looked exactly like what she was. Someone struggling. Someone exhausted. Someone who didn't belong in a building like this. Floor 12. The elevator climbed smoothly. No jerking. No groaning like the one in her apartment building. The doors opened. A woman in a suit that cost more than Shanice made in 6 months stood waiting in the hallway. Perfect posture. Perfect hair. Looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Ms. Porter. Not a question. A statement. Like she'd been expected. Like she was on a list. How did you know? Mr. Park is expecting you. This way, please. Shanice's stomach dropped. Mr. Park. A name. A real name. This was real. This was happening. She followed the woman through a hallway made of windows and wealth. Floor-to-ceiling glass on one side showing the city sprawling below. Art on the walls that looked expensive. Real. The kind you see in museums. Every step felt wrong. Like she was trespassing in a world that wasn't meant for people like her. Like security would appear any second and escort her out. Apologize to the other occupants for the disruption. They stopped at a conference room door. Heavy. Solid. With a small plaque that said, Park Enterprises. The woman opened it. Jin-ho stood at the window. But different now. Transformed. Clean-shaven. Hair cut and styled perfectly. Wearing a suit that probably cost what Shanice made in a year. Maybe more. But his eyes. The same ones that had looked like they were drowning in that diner booth 24 hours ago. Shanice's breath caught. Her hand went to her chest. You. Jin-ho turned. Slowly. Like he was nervous. Like he wasn't sure how this would go. Thank you for coming. Please. Sit. His voice was different. Steadier. More confident. But still carrying that same weight. That same exhaustion underneath. What is this? Shanice stayed standing. Her legs felt weak. The truth. He gestured to the chair. Please. I need to tell you everything. And then I need to ask you something. Shanice sat. Slowly. On the edge of the chair. Ready to run if she needed to. Jin-ho sat across from her. Not at the head of the table. Across. Like they were equals. He told her. All of it. Every detail. The test. 6 weeks. 46 people who failed. The restaurants and hotels and coffee shops and security guards. The charity gala. The flagship restaurant where he wasn't allowed in. The coffee shop where he wasn't allowed to use the bathroom. Marcus who didn't recognize him. The slow, methodical destruction of every shred of faith he'd had left in humanity. Every belief his wife had whispered to him in the dark. Every hope that people were fundamentally good underneath their fear. You're the 47th person I tested, he said. His voice was quiet. The last one. Shanice's heart hammered against her ribs. So hard she thought he might hear it. And? You're the first person who passed. Silence filled the room. Heavy and profound. The kind of silence that changes things. Jin-ho slid a folder across the polished table. Expensive paper. Thick. Professional. I want to offer you a position. Shanice's vision blurred at the edges. A position? Chief of Human Experience. You'd oversee every customer-facing interaction across 8 hotels. 12 restaurants. 74 locations total. Every guest. Every interaction. Every moment where our company touches someone's life. Her hands shook as she opened the folder. The first page hit her like a physical blow. Like someone had punched her in the stomach. Annual salary, $190,000. Signing bonus, $75,000. Benefits. Healthcare. Vision. Dental. Life insurance. Retirement matching. All of it. Everything she'd never had. Everything she'd stopped dreaming about. The room spun. The numbers didn't make sense. Couldn't be real. This was a joke. A test. A cruel prank. I serve eggs for a living, she whispered. Her voice barely audible. You see people. That's worth more than any MBA I've ever paid for. More valuable than any degree or certification or credential. I don't have experience. I didn't even finish college. I don't know anything about. Stop. Jin-ho's voice cut through her spiral. Firm but kind. I don't need your credentials. I don't need your resume. I don't need to see your education history or your references or your professional network. He leaned forward. I need the instinct that made you sit with a stranger who looked like he was about to break. The thing that made you give away food to someone who couldn't pay you back. The part of you that asked if I was okay when you had every reason not to care. When you had 19 hours of shift behind you and every excuse to just walk past. Shanice stared at the numbers. Thought about her daughter's inhaler. The prescription they kept denying. The rent notice taped to her door. The shifts that were turning her body into something that barely functioned. The car that was about to die. The electricity bill. The shoes her daughter needed. The life she could give her. The life she'd stopped imagining was possible. Why me? Because 46 people saw my clothes, my smell, what I couldn't do for them. You saw someone who was hungry. His voice cracked slightly. And you fed them anyway. Without calculating. Without expecting anything back. Without performing for an audience or a tip or recognition. Her eyes filled. Hot tears that she couldn't stop. Didn't want to stop. What if I fail? Then we figure it out. He paused. Met her eyes directly. Together. I'm not hiring you to be perfect. I'm hiring you to be exactly who you are. She looked at the folder again. At the numbers that could change everything. At the life it represented. The one she could give her daughter. The one where she wasn't constantly calculating. Constantly short. Constantly one emergency away from complete collapse. There's one condition. Jin-ho slid another paper forward. A single page. Simple language. No legal jargon. You stay exactly who you are. The second you start calculating kindness, performing it instead of living it, this ends. I need that as a promise. Not just words. A commitment. Shanice laughed. It came out broken and wet and real. Tears streaming down her face now. That's the easiest thing anyone's ever asked me. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook so violently she could barely write. The signature looked like a child's. Messy. Unsteady. But she signed her name. And everything changed. The first 3 months were brutal. Not because of the work. The work made sense to her. The principles were intuitive. See people. Treat them like humans. Remember that everyone is carrying something heavy. But because of the looks. The whispers. The doubt. Other executives whispered when she walked into meetings. Questioned her credentials. Her background. Her right to be there. Her right to sit at tables where decisions got made. She's a diversity hire, someone said in a bathroom stall, not knowing Shanice was washing her hands 2 feet away. Park's trying to look progressive. He's lost it, another executive told his assistant loud enough for half the office to hear. Hiring some waitress to run customer experience. This company's going to collapse. Our stock's going to tank. Shareholders are going to revolt. Board members pushed back. Openly. In meetings. What are her qualifications? Where did she get her degree? What's her professional background? Jin-ho heard all of it. Every comment. Every complaint. Every doubt. And he didn't care. Because Shanice was doing something nobody else could. Something that couldn't be taught in business school or learned from a textbook. She was teaching people to see each other again. Within her first month, Shanice implemented a new policy. One that made the board collectively lose their minds. Every executive, from housekeeping managers to department heads to Jin-ho himself, would work one anonymous shift every month. Front desk. Room service. Cleaning. Valet. Kitchen. Whatever needed doing. She called them Invisible Tuesdays. The second you forget what it feels like to be overlooked, she told the board during her presentation, you start doing it to other people. And once you start doing it, you can't build a company that makes people feel seen. The board hated it. Complained. Threatened to quit. This is beneath us. We didn't work our way to executive positions to scrub toilets. This is insulting to our expertise and experience. Jin-ho backed her completely. Stood up during the meeting. His voice was calm but absolute. Do it or leave. Your choice. But if you stay, you participate. No exceptions. Silence. Nobody quit. They did it. And everything started to shift. Slowly at first. Then faster. The CFO, a man named Robert who'd spent 20 years in finance, spent 4 hours as a valet on his Invisible Tuesday. Got yelled at by 3 different guests. Had someone throw their keys at his chest when he wasn't fast enough. Stood in the cold for hours. His feet hurt. His back hurt. A guest called him an idiot when Robert couldn't immediately locate his car. Robert came back to the office quiet. Thoughtful. Different. 2 weeks later, he increased valet wages by 18%. Added a heating station in winter. Cooling stations in summer. Better uniforms. Proper breaks. Nobody should be treated like that, he told Jin-ho. I had no idea. The VP of operations, a woman named Linda who prided herself on efficiency, worked a housekeeping shift. Cleaned 17 rooms in 8 hours. Her back gave out halfway through. Sharp pain that made her gasp. Made her stop and breathe and wonder how people did this every day. Multiple times a day. She couldn't walk right for 3 days. Needed a heating pad and muscle relaxers. She hired 30 more housekeepers the following month. Reduced the room quota. Added proper training on body mechanics. Bought better equipment. We were destroying people's bodies for profit, she said. That's not okay. The director of food and beverage, a man named Thomas with a culinary degree from Paris, worked as a line cook. Burned his hand on the third order. The heat was suffocating. Oppressive. A wall that hit you the second you stepped into the kitchen. Got screamed at when orders backed up. When tickets piled up. When things took too long. Felt the suffocating pressure and impossible expectations. The knowledge that one mistake meant someone didn't eat. Meant a bad review. Meant lost revenue. He changed the kitchen policies within a week. Better ventilation. Proper breaks. Reasonable ticket times. More staff during peak hours. We were treating humans like machines, he admitted. Expecting perfection under impossible conditions. Shanice wasn't just changing operations. She was changing the people running them. Teaching them empathy through experience. Making them remember what it felt like to be on the other side. And the change rippled outward. But the real transformation happened in small moments. Moments that didn't make reports or quarterly reviews but mattered more than anything else. A guest at the downtown hotel had a panic attack in the lobby. Full breakdown. Hyperventilating. Couldn't breathe. Thought she was dying. Other guests stared. Whispered. Pulled out their phones. The front desk manager, someone who'd worked an Invisible Tuesday as a housekeeper, didn't call security. Didn't treat it like a problem to remove. Didn't try to hustle her somewhere less visible. She walked around the desk. Sat down next to the woman. On the floor. In her expensive suit on the marble floor where everyone could see. Asked what she needed. Breathed with her. Counted breaths together. Stayed until it passed. Until the woman could breathe normally again. You're okay. You're safe. We're here. The woman later wrote a review that went viral. Posted it on every platform. 3 million views across social media. This hotel didn't just give me a room. They saw me. They saw me when I was breaking and they didn't look away. They didn't treat me like a problem. They treated me like a human. A kitchen worker at one of the restaurants was running late. Car trouble. Dead battery on a morning when everything went wrong. Called and panicking, terrified he'd lose his job. His voice shaking on the phone. The general manager, who'd worked an Invisible Tuesday in that same kitchen, who'd felt the heat and the pressure and the impossible expectations, told him not to worry. We'll cover your shift. Take care of your car. Your job is safe. We'll figure it out. The kitchen worker later told his entire family. 5 of them applied to work for the company. Put Park Enterprises as their first choice. Their only choice. They treat you like you matter, he said. Not like you're replaceable. A housekeeper found a guest crying in their room. Door open. Divorce papers scattered across the bed like evidence of a life falling apart. The housekeeper could have just cleaned and left. Could have closed the door quietly. Could have pretended she didn't see anything. She didn't. Asked if the guest needed anything. Brought tea. Sat for 5 minutes without saying much. Just listening. Just being present. That guest came back 6 times that year. Always requested that same housekeeper. Left notes. Tips that got bigger each time. $500 on the last visit. You saved me, the guest said. You didn't even know it, but you did. I was so close to doing something I couldn't take back. And you reminded me that people still care. These stories multiplied. Spread through the company like roots breaking through concrete. Changed the culture from the inside out. Shanice wasn't managing customer experience. She was teaching people to see each other again. To remember that every interaction was a chance to make someone's impossible day slightly more bearable. 14 months after that diner meeting, Jin-ho stood in the back of a ballroom. Downtown Ritz-Carlton. Industry Summit. 500 hospitality executives in suits that cost what Shanice used to make in 3 months. Jewelry worth more than her car. Shoes worth more than her rent. Shanice was on stage. Spotlight making her look taller than she was. More confident than she probably felt. But her voice was steady now. Stronger. Most companies measure success in quarterly reports and Yelp reviews. Star ratings and profit margins. Customer acquisition costs and lifetime value. She paused. Let it land. Let them hear the words. We measure it differently. Did we see that guest? Did we make them feel human? Did we lighten what they were carrying, even for just a meal, just one night? Did we make them feel less alone? A hand shot up. Third row. Older man. 60-something. Expensive watch catching the light. The kind of executive who'd probably never spent a day on the floor. Never cleaned a room or served a meal or dealt with an angry customer. How do you train staff to do that? Shanice smiled. We don't train for it. We hire for it. And then we protect it like it's sacred. Like it's the most valuable thing we have. But you must have some process. Every executive in our company, from housekeeping managers to Mr. Park himself, works one anonymous shift every month. Front desk. Room service. Cleaning. We call them Invisible Tuesdays. The room shifted. Executives leaning forward now. Phones down. Attention caught. What's the point? Someone called from the back. Because the second you forget what it feels like to be dismissed, overlooked, treated like you don't matter, you start doing it to other people. And once you start doing it, you can't build a company that makes people feel seen. You can't create a culture of empathy from behind a desk. You have to feel it. Silence. Then someone in the back started clapping. Slow at first. Then faster. Then another person joined. And another. Within seconds, the entire room was standing. 500 executives on their feet. Applause thundering through the space like a wave. Some of them had tears in their eyes. Jin-ho felt his wife's voice in his head. Crystal clear. Like she was standing right beside him. Like she'd been there all along, waiting for him to hear her. People are good, Jean. You just have to give them the chance to show you. She was right. She'd been right all along. He just needed someone to prove it. 46 people failed the test. But one person passed. And that changed everything. 6 months later, Jin-ho and Shanice stood on the rooftop of the flagship hotel. 37 floors up. City lights sprawling beneath them like a galaxy made of hope and struggle and humanity. The air was cool. Clear. Stars visible despite the light pollution. You ever think about that morning? Jin-ho asked. Every day. Shanice's voice was quiet. Every single day. What would have happened if you hadn't sat down? Shanice was quiet for a moment. Considering. You would have given up. Test 47 would have been the final proof. You would have lost your faith completely. And you? I would have stayed exactly where I was. 19-hour shifts. Counting pennies. Watching my daughter suffer because I couldn't afford her medicine. She paused. We saved each other, I think. Do you miss it? The diner? She laughed. Soft. I miss the simplicity. Knowing exactly what my day would look like. Clock in. Serve food. Clock out. No board meetings. No executive decisions. No responsibility for 74 locations. But no. Not really. This matters more. Your daughter's doing better. Inhalers covered now. No more denials. No more emergency room visits in the middle of the night. She's playing soccer. Joined the team last month. Something I never thought we'd afford. She's thriving. Jin-ho nodded. Looked out at the city. At the empire he'd built. The one that almost meant nothing. I tested 46 people. 46 proofs that humans are selfish. That kindness is transactional. That my wife was wrong about everything. But she wasn't. No. She wasn't. He turned to face Shanice. His eyes wet. You know what the worst part was? I was looking for reasons to give up. Evidence that the world was exactly as cruel as I thought. That humanity was broken beyond repair. And 46 people gave me that evidence. Confirmed my worst beliefs. But one didn't. One didn't. His voice broke slightly. Cracked around the edges. One person saw me. Really saw me. And that changed everything. Saved my life. Gave me a reason to keep going. Shanice's eyes filled. I didn't do anything special. That's the whole point. You didn't think it was special. It was just who you are. You saw someone hungry and you fed them. You saw someone breaking and you sat with them. No calculation. No performance. Just humanity. They stood in silence for a while. Watching the city breathe. Millions of people down there. Each one carrying something. Each one fighting battles nobody else could see. The company's different now, Shanice said. I can feel it. The employees can feel it. The guests can feel it. Because you're different. Because you showed people it's okay to care again. That kindness isn't weakness. We're not perfect. No. But we're trying. That's more than most companies can say. The next morning, Jin-ho did something he hadn't done in over a year. He put on the old clothes. The torn jacket. The boots that were too big. Let the dirt accumulate under his fingernails. And he walked into one of his hotels. The downtown one. The flagship. The one with the marble floors and the crystal chandelier imported from Italy. The front desk clerk looked up. A young man. Early 20s. Name tag said Michael. Smiled. Genuine and warm. Good morning, sir. How can I help you? Jin-ho felt his throat tighten. I'm just looking for directions. Of course. Where are you headed? No judgment in his voice. No fear. No cold dismissal. No assessment of whether Jin-ho was worth his time. Just help. Simple. Immediate. Jin-ho gave a random address. Made one up. Michael pulled up a map. Wrote down directions on the hotel notepad. Clear and detailed. Drew a little diagram. It's about 15 minutes on foot. You need anything else? Coffee? Water? We have a sitting area if you need to rest for a bit. No. Thank you. Have a great day, sir. Stay warm out there. Jin-ho walked out. His vision blurred. But he was smiling. It was working. The change was real. Sustainable. Spreading. But the story doesn't end there. Because kindness isn't a single moment. It's not a transaction or a one-time decision or a box you check and move on. It's a choice you make every single day. Every interaction. Every person you meet. It's deciding that people matter more than efficiency. That humanity is more valuable than profit. That seeing someone is more important than convenience. 3 years after hiring Shanice, Jin-ho's company became the highest-rated hospitality group in the region. Not because of luxury. Not because of amenities or thread count or marble bathrooms or rooftop pools. Because people felt seen. Guests wrote reviews that said things like, "They treated me like a person, not a transaction. I didn't realize how rare that was until I stayed here. The staff remembered my name. Asked about my mother who'd been sick. Followed up on things I mentioned in passing. They cared. I felt human there. Like I mattered. Like I wasn't just a credit card number and a room assignment." The company grew. Not just in revenue, though that increased too. Market share expanded. Stock prices rose. But more importantly, in reputation. In impact. In the lives they touched. Other hotels started copying the Invisible Tuesday model. Other companies reached out to Shanice for consulting. Her story went viral. TED Talk with 4 million views. Podcasts. Articles in Forbes and Harvard Business Review. Speaking engagements at conferences around the world. But she stayed grounded. Stayed exactly who she was. Still ate lunch with housekeepers. Still knew the names of line cooks and valets. Still asked people how they were doing and meant it. Because that was the promise she made. And promises mattered. 5 years after that morning in the diner, Jin-ho and Shanice opened a training center. Not for hospitality. For humanity. They taught businesses how to see people. How to build cultures where kindness wasn't a performance. Where empathy was structural, not accidental. Where caring about people wasn't a nice-to-have but the foundation everything else was built on. And they always told the same story. About a man who lost everything that mattered. Who tested humanity 46 times and failed every single one. Who was ready to give up on people completely. Until a waitress working a 19-hour shift saw him. Really saw him. Fed him. Sat with him. Asked if he was okay. And reminded him that people are good. They just need someone to go first. Someone to show them it's safe. Someone to prove that kindness won't be punished. The last time Jin-ho went back to Mel's diner, it was 7 years after that first morning. The place was packed now. New owners who'd heard the story and wanted to preserve it. Renovated booths. Fresh paint. But they kept the same cracked linoleum. The same cheap coffee. The same corner booth where everything changed. Jin-ho sat there at 6:30 in the morning. Same time. A young server walked up. Nervous. First week on the job. Name tag said Amanda. Coffee? Please. She poured with shaking hands. Spilled a little on the table. Apologized profusely. Her face flushed red. It's okay, Jin-ho said gently. You're doing great. First day. First week. I'm sorry, I'm still learning. You're doing fine. Everyone spills coffee. I did it all the time. She smiled. Grateful and genuine. Relaxed slightly. Jin-ho watched her work. Saw the same thing he'd seen in Shanice 7 years ago. That spark. That refusal to let exhaustion turn into cruelty. That instinct to care even when everything hurt. When she brought his check, Jin-ho left $200. And a note on the napkin. Keep going. You're changing lives and you don't even know it yet. Every person you see matters. Every moment of kindness creates ripples you'll never see. Thank you for being exactly who you are. He walked out into the morning sun. The city waking up around him. People rushing to work. To school. To appointments. Each one carrying something heavy. Each one deserving to be seen. His wife's voice in his head. Steady and certain and right. People are good, Jean. You just have to give them the chance to show you. She was right. And he'd spent the rest of his life proving it. Kindness doesn't need an audience. Doesn't need recognition. Doesn't need applause or viral moments or reward. It just needs to exist. To be given freely. To be offered without calculation. Shanice did that. She saw someone everyone else erased. Fed him. Sat with him. Reminded him he was human when he'd forgotten. That one moment didn't just save Jin-ho's life. It built something bigger. A company that measures success not in profit margins but in how many people walk away feeling seen. Feeling human. Feeling less alone. And maybe that's the whole point. Maybe we're all just waiting for someone to go first. To show us it's okay to care. To prove that kindness isn't weakness. That seeing people isn't foolish. Maybe we're all one moment away from changing someone's entire life. From being the reason someone decides to keep going. So here's my question for you. When's the last time you really saw someone? Not just looked at them. But saw them. The person serving your coffee. The cashier at the grocery store. The delivery driver. The person asking for change on the corner. The coworker who's quieter than usual. When's the last time you went first? Asked if someone was okay. Offered help without being asked. Gave without expecting anything back. Sat with someone in their pain instead of looking away. Because someone out there is running their own test right now. 46 people deep. One more failure away from giving up completely. From deciding that humanity is exactly as cruel as they fear. And you might be number 47. You might be the person who changes everything. Who proves that people are still good. That the world hasn't rotted through. That kindness still exists and matters and saves lives. If this story wrecked you the way it wrecked me, drop a comment below. Tell me about a time someone saw you when you needed it most. When someone's kindness saved you. When someone went first and showed you that people still care. Or tell me about a time you were that person for someone else. When you chose to see instead of look away. When you offered kindness that cost you something but mattered more than anything else. Let's build proof that kindness still matters. That humanity isn't dead. That we're all still capable of saving each other. Tomorrow's story will destroy you in a completely different way. About a man who spent 20 years building the perfect revenge, only to discover the person who ruined his life never remembered him at all. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you made it this far, thank you. For listening. For caring. For being the kind of person who still believes people matter. Who still thinks stories about kindness are worth your time. Now go be someone's number 47. Go be the person who proves humanity is still good. Who shows someone that they matter. That they're seen. That they're not alone. Because somewhere out there, someone's waiting. Testing. Hoping. One moment away from giving up. And you might be exactly what they need.